January 31st marks the 24th anniversary of Final Fantasy VII's release. Since then, it has come out on other platforms, and no matter how you experienced it, the game continues to resonate after nearly 2.5 decades after its first launch. To some, it's regarded as the greatest game ever made. There is no denying the influence of Final Fantasy VII on RPGs, and when Square Enix asked fans on Twitter to share some of their favorite memories of playing the game, many fans immediately responded with some of their favorite moments. For many, Final Fantasy VII is held close to their heart and is something that is very special, myself included, so many years later. The whole of Final Fantasy VII grew into a collection of multiple video games, animated features, and short stories that take place in the continuity of Final Fantasy VII. There are multiple spin-offs that follow other characters like Zack Fair and Vincent Valentine, and have expanded the game into a much larger story and world. Characters like Cloud, Sephiroth, and Aerith have made appearances in other games like Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy Tactics. What's great about Final Fantasy VII right now is that it's going to continue being quite relevant in the coming years. Not only is the Final Fantasy VII Remake available on PlayStation 4, but Square Enix might eventually bring the game to new platforms. And outside of this, the second entry in the Remake series is also currently in development and will release in the future. So what about you? Do you have any special memories of Final Fantasy VII? Be sure to let me know what they are. For me, my first exposure to the game was a copy that I played on my PlayStation 2 console. We didn't have much, but I was lucky enough to eventually obtain a PlayStation 2, which to this day is my favorite console. I got a copy of the game and I jumped right in. In the beginning, I didn't have a memory card. I wasn't sure how it worked, so for a while, I played without the ability to save. The game was also available to play at my local Blockbuster back in the day. There was a PlayStation you could sample playing at the store, and I remember going there and playing for a bit, starting the mission to blow up the first reactor and doing a few of the battles with Cloud in the beginning. Maybe this is why the original Midgar is cemented in my memory. The opening intro felt very grand and cinematic, and the adventure starts immediately with Cloud jumping off the train and joining the fight with his iconic Buster Sword. He was someone cool, and I looked up to him. I found ways to keep myself busy and explore, and try to get every little interaction I could from the inhabitants of Midgar. The music in this game was incredible. It gave weight to the world, and at the time made it feel so alive. I think the soundtrack of Final Fantasy VII is the best in the series. The tracks are so memorable and some so haunting. Some of my favorite tracks from the game include You Can Hear the Cry of the Planet, Aerith's theme, the Prelude theme, the Battle theme, and those chosen by the planet. I could feel the energy during the raid on Reactor Number 1, on playing a cool mercenary that was hired by Avalanche for their mission to save the planet from Shinra. I explored Sector 7, reunited with Tifa, went on the second raid at Reactor Number 5, met Aerith, a thoughtful and cheerful girl with an aura of sadness. To me, it was all just so beautiful from the very beginning. I continued to Wall Market, the sewers, the train graveyard, and the assault on the pillar, to eventually raiding Shinra's headquarters. I have a very specific memory of climbing up Shinra headquarters after they destroyed the plate. I don't know why. There was something about just sitting with the realization of what Shinra had done, like wanting to save Aerith. I did this over and over and over again, and it was so much fun to either storm the front of the headquarters and attack them directly, or to take the really long flight of stairs, sometimes even making it as far as Nibelheim. It was challenging without a memory card, but eventually I got a memory card and was able to save and eventually wander out farther and explore the rest of this amazing world. The turn-based combat has its charm in this game, and I appreciate it a lot. It allowed you to think and plan, and it worked really well. Materia was also a really unique idea. Each character had a set base of stats, and those stats were altered based on the materia that you equipped. It allowed you to turn Barret or Cid into mage-type characters if you chose, and represented a form of freedom and customization that we see everywhere today. Materia was multi-dimensional. You could build up each and every piece, and once built, anyone could equip it. The materia slots and gear were unique, with Cloud's Buster Sword with the 2 slots ingrained in my memory. The story of Final Fantasy VII seems simple and straightforward. Save the planet, defeat Shinra. Save the planet, defeat Sephiroth. But there are so many philosophical and psychological angles. Sephiroth is heartless and brutal, yet oddly sympathetic. He is a villain that is cemented in memory and truly iconic. His long flowing hair and impossibly long sword captivated me at a young age. Who was he? Why is he doing this? What is his relationship to Cloud? What's going on? I had to find out. The character list is filled with so many interesting characters, and it just has a great cast. Cloud Strife, our main protagonist, a childhood friend of Tifa, a former soldier first class, an elite fighter from Shinra's ranks. He comes off as cool, calm, detached, and sometimes sarcastic, getting into arguments with Barret. But is he really who he says he is? And then we have Barret Wallace, leader of Avalanche. His goal is to take down the Shinra Electric Power Company, which he believes is killing Gaia, the planet. He's the adoptive father of Marlene, who is the daughter of his best friend, Dyne. Barret has a gun arm prosthetic after losing his arm and his best friend in his heartbreaking past. He and Cloud clash a lot and get into so many arguments, it's hilarious. I always enjoyed his cursing and how in the original game it was censored with random symbols. I really admire Barret's passion to save the planet. Next we have Tifa Lockhart. Tifa is a childhood friend of Cloud from the town of Nibelheim. She's an impressive martial artist that can hold her own. She runs the 7th Heaven Bar in the slums of Midgar. And she's the only character in the game that knows the truth about Cloud's past. She is a beloved main character and one of the leaders of Avalanche. It is she who convinces Cloud to join them in their rebellion against Shinra. And in the end, it is Tifa that ultimately helps Cloud piece back his memories when they fall into the live stream together. If that's not true love, I don't know what is. Next we have Red 13. He's a strong and smart, sort of a wolf-like creature that can speak. He joins the team after being rescued from Hojo's laboratory. He thought his father was a coward who abandoned them and their village during a war, but eventually learns that he had sacrificed his life to save the village. After learning the truth, he wants to see more of the world and permanently joins the group. Next we have Yuffie Kisaragi. Yuffie is the daughter of the leader of Wutai, a country at war with Shinra, a mysterious ninja that steals materia. She betrays the party by stealing their materia, but eventually joins up with them. When Aerith is murdered by Sephiroth, we can witness an uncharacteristic display of emotion from the character, as she breaks down in Cloud's arms after failing to control her sobbing. Next we have Cait Sith, a robotic talking cat. He rides on the back of a Moogle, who is also a robot. He is controlled by a Shinra employee named Reeve Tuesti. Reeve wants to spy on the group and sabotage their efforts against Shinra. He has a change of heart and decides to help, and even risks his life to prevent Sephiroth from obtaining the black materia. Vincent Valentine, a mysterious character that we find sleeping in a coffin in the basement of Shinra Mansion in Nibelheim. He joins the party because he has unfinished business with Hojo. Just an awesome all-around character with a deep story. He was optional, but is very popular with fans. He might be just as cool as Cloud and Sephiroth, if not cooler. We also have Sid Highwind. Sid is an airship pilot. I can't think of anyone that can swear as much, if not more, than Barrett in gaming. His dream of piloting a rocket into space fails when Shinra canceled the program. He blames his assistant Shera because she was conducting checks on the oxygen that took too long and was concerned about the safety of the rocket. She was right and saved his life. He's a spear-wielding dragoon-type character. Aerith Gainsborough. Last but not least, we have Aerith Gainsborough. Aerith is first introduced as a flower girl, selling flowers to the inhabitants of Midgar. Cloud falls through the roof of Aerith's church in the Sector 5 slums, where she's being chased by the Turks. Aerith asks Cloud to be her bodyguard for the cost of one date. She is eventually captured, but is ultimately rescued by Cloud and his allies. Aerith is the last of the Cetra, an ancient race with powerful magical abilities, and so the Shinra Electric Power Company hunts her throughout her life, seeking to exploit her powers. Aerith then joins them in pursuit of Sephiroth, while also embarking on her own journey of self-discovery. Let's talk about Aerith's death. One could argue that looking back, the scene didn't age well. The blocky characters and crude animation might make it seem silly, but for me, and many others, this is an emotional moment that's truly tragic. It still makes me tear up today. The moment seemed to last forever and is beautifully directed. It is one of the most devastating and somber moments in gaming. From Kofi Amankwa Jr.'s article, how Aerith's death scene set the stage for an emotional moment in the game. A lot of decisions were made behind the scenes that factored into ultimately agreeing to kill off Aerith. During Final Fantasy VII's development, the series creator and the game's producer, Hironobu Sakaguchi's mother, passed away. Him learning to deal with that grief parlayed into some of the core themes of the game's story, which highlights spiritualism, reincarnation, and embracing one's identity after dealing with loss. He also wanted to incorporate that feeling of a sense of loss in the game that would make the player feel such a heavy emotion. And so Sakaguchi, along with the game's director Yoshinori Kitase, writer Kuzushige Nojima, and artist and co-writer of the story Tetsuya Nomura, agreed that the lead heroine would be killed off by the main villain. They also wanted to break away from the Hollywood norm in movies where the leading hero would die in a fight against a villain and have the love interest carry on without them. To them, it became a cliché at this point since most video games at the time were mimicking that trope as well. They wanted to drive home the point that nobody was ever safe in a story, and if the villain was as cunning and skilled as he says he is, he would eliminate the biggest threat to his goals. Throughout the course of the game's first disc, Aerith can indeed become a fully developed character before her death, and by that fact alone she becomes unique. She's the only character with limit breaks that heal your other party members as well. Aerith is unique in the fact that she quite simply has the highest magic stat in the game. She is better with spells than every other character. This makes her a huge asset in parts of the game where she's alive. But once she dies, she's simply gone. She's just gone. And her death is inevitable. You can't beat the game without her untimely death. And once it happens, there's nothing you can do to bring her back. It was theorized for years, but sadly, there's nothing that can be done to bring Aerith back. When Aerith is lost, a deep melancholy affected me. When she dies, her ultimate weapon disappears. You can't use her limit break. And your most powerful magic user is nowhere to be found. You spend the rest of the game left to accept this absence of a playable character and one of Cloud's closest companions. The game doesn't just tell you that there's a loss, it makes you feel the loss. When she dies, your ability to act in the game world decreases. Not only does Cloud express to you his grief, you're led to really feel it. A sullen sort of gloom that you carry with you. These are the kinds of details that separate Final Fantasy VII from other games, and this is why Final Fantasy VII and this moment of Aerith's death in particular is so iconic and powerful. It leaves a gaping void that can't be filled, a deep sadness and heartache that we carry with us. Thank you, Final Fantasy VII, for the memories.